Happy morning, students. Today we are going to see about the transport across the cell membrane. You remember the rule of two, okay? So everything will be two. See, the cell membrane, it is made up of two components. One is phospholipids, other one is proteins. And these are the two major components. So the phospholipid is of two layers. So that is why it is called lipid bilayer. And the proteins is of two types. One is integral protein, other one is a peripheral protein. And coming to the transport is of two types. Okay, one is a active transport, other one is a passive transport. The active transport is of two types. One is a primary active transport, other one is a secondary active transport. And the passive transport, the major two types. One is the diffusion, other one is the osmosis. And the diffusion is of two types. One is simple diffusion, other one is the facilitated diffusion. So today we will see the active transport. Okay, so what is active transport? It is the movement of substances across the cell membrane against the concentration gradient, that is from low concentration to higher concentration, with the use of energy. So against the gradient with the use of energy, these two are very important. And a good example is here you have two types. One is a primary active transport, other one is a secondary active transport. The primary active transport is the same transport across the cell membrane, and the transporter uses the energy in the form of ATP. So that is called primary active transport. A good example is sodium potassium ATPase pump, and this pump pumps sodium ions from inside to outside. Normally the intracellular sodium is very low and outside is high, but still it is pumping the sodium from inside to outside. So it is called a primary active transport. Coming to the secondary active transport, so this transport is occurring because of the gradient created by the primary active transport. That is why it is called secondary active transport. See, whatever the sodium it is pumped outside, it has a tendency to come inside because of more concentration outside. When it is coming inside, it will take the substances along with him in the same direction. So if it is taking a substance along in the same direction, it is called symport or co-transport. If one substance is, if the same sodium is coming in and another substance is going out, it is called antiport, okay, or counter transport. So a good example for co-transport or symport is sodium glucose transport. Example for antiport is sodium hydrogen exchanger. So this, when you come across, you will learn. So this is regarding a active transport. So active transport against the gradient and with the use of energy. If the energy is used directly, it is called primary active transport from ATP, and if the energy is derived from the primary active transport, it is called a secondary active transport. Coming to the diffusion, so diffusion is the passive transport. So coming to passive transport, you have two types. One is osmosis, other one is diffusion. So osmosis is movement of substances from higher concentration to lower concentration, that is along the gradient. And coming to the diffusion is of two types. One is simple diffusion, other one is facilitated diffusion. So simple diffusion, as the name implies, it is simple. The transport occurring along the gradient from higher concentration to lower concentration through the intermolecular spaces of the cell membrane. This is more applicable for a fat soluble substances like oxygen, carbon dioxide. A good example is oxygen carbon dioxide transport across the alveolus. Whereas the facilitated diffusion, the transport of substances from higher concentration to lower concentration, and here it is mediated by or facilitated by a carrier. That is why it is called facilitated diffusion. The good example is glucose transport. So in our body we have glut, GLUT, glut. So these gluts are example for facilitated diffusion. So to sum up, the transport is of two types, active and passive transport, And active transport is of two types: primary active transport, secondary active transport. And passive transport, the major two types: one is diffusion, other one is osmosis. And the diffusion is of two types: simple diffusion and facilitated diffusion. So this we have an idea about the transport across the cell membrane. Thank you for watching.